The city of Verigala was a place where darkness and light danced in an endless battle. Towering spires of stone reached up to the skies, and the streets below were filled with both luxury and misery. The people whispered of power, curses, and of a mafia boss who ruled it all with an iron fist. His name was Vincenzo Vieri, and his reputation stretched across the city like a shadow. In the heart of this city stood a grave, overgrown with wild ivy and guarded by an eerie silence. The gravestone read, Serafina D'Ambrosi, daughter of House D'Ambrosi, murdered in the year of the blood moon. Yet this was not the full truth. The woman the city believed to be dead was not truly gone. For 2 years, Serafina had watched her own grave. Every week, Vincenzo left a single red rose on her tombstone. He never knew that the woman he mourned, the one whose life he had destroyed, still lived in the shadows. Cursed by a spell that bound her between the realms of life and death, she could never escape the forest that had become her prison. Her heart still beat, but it was a hollow sound. Her body did not decay, yet she could not feel the warmth of the sun, nor the coolness of the rain. Her existence was a curse, bound by vengeance lost in time. Serafina had once been the daughter of a noble family, beloved by all. Her father, Lord D'Ambrosi, had been a man of great power, a leader among the noble houses, and a rival to Vincenzo. Their families had been enemies for years, ever since her father had rejected Vincenzo's offer of alliance. That refusal had sparked the war that led to her family's fall. She could still remember the night of the fire. It had been a cruel betrayal. Her father, who had been strong and proud, had been struck down by his closest allies, those he had trusted most. The flames had swallowed their home, and Serafina had been left to die among the wreckage. But fate had a different plan for her. A dark witch had come to her in the moment before her last breath, cursing her to remain between the world of the living and the dead. Live, but never be truly alive, the witch had whispered. Seek revenge, but never taste the sweet satisfaction of it. The curse had trapped her in this limbo, and so Serafina had been bound to the very earth she had once walked. Every week, she would feel the cold presence of Vincenzo as he came to her grave, placing the same rose upon the stone, unaware that it was her heart he was mourning. The rose, so delicate and beautiful, symbolized everything she could never have: life, love, vengeance. She stood now in the shadow of the ancient oak trees of the cursed forest, her eyes fixed on the city's skyline. Vincenzo's mansion stood high above the rest of the buildings, a symbol of power and fear. Her fingers brushed the cold stone of her grave, and for a moment the memories flooded back to her. The warmth of the sun on her skin, the laughter of her family, and the man who had destroyed everything she loved. He had no idea that she was still here. Every time he left a rose, it was as if he was leaving a piece of his soul with her, and yet there was no malice in his gesture. No hate, only sorrow. Serafina's heart twisted with emotions she could not escape. Part of her wanted to curse him, to make him suffer for the life he had stolen from her, but another part of her, a part she couldn't deny, still longed for him. She didn't know why. Maybe it was because in all this time, he was the only one who had remembered her. Maybe it was because she was the only one who knew the true weight of his guilt. She couldn't help but wonder, though. Did he feel the same guilt she felt? Did he know what he had done? She had to know. She had to see him again. But the question was how? How could a spirit, trapped in a forest between life and death, make contact with the man who had destroyed her? The forest was her prison, and yet it was also her power. She could move through its shadows, unseen by the living. She could reach out, touch the edges of the world, but never fully enter it. But now, something was changing. There was a force she couldn't explain, a pull that seemed to call her to the very gates of Vincenzo's world. Serafina's hands clenched into fists, her nails biting into her ghostly skin. She could feel it. Something had shifted. This time, when Vincenzo left his rose, she would be there. She would step out from the shadows and confront him. She would make him remember what he had done to her family. She would make him pay. But as she looked out across the city, something else gripped her heart. What if her presence changed everything? What if the curse could be broken? Could she ever truly return to the world of the living? Or was she doomed to haunt her own grave forever? The wind stirred around her, and for a brief moment the forest seemed to breathe with her. The air grew colder, and the distant chime of a bell echoed through the trees. It was almost time. Vincenzo would come again, just as he always did, and this time she would be ready. As the evening shadows lengthened, Serafina stepped toward the edge of the forest, her heart beating in time with the distant sound of Vincenzo's footsteps. She was no longer the broken, cursed woman she had once been. Something inside her had shifted. Something had awoken. Tonight she would not watch from the shadows. Tonight she would make herself known. The moon was full, casting a pale glow over the city of Verigale. The streets below were filled with whispers and shadows, the noise of life blending with the dark silence of the night. The mansion of Vincenzo Vieri loomed above it all, a towering symbol of power and fear. It was here that Serafina had once lived, in a world where laughter and light filled every corner of her home. But that world had burned to the ground, along with her family, leaving her nothing but a hollow existence in the cursed forest. Serafina stood at the edge of the forest looking up at the mansion. She could feel her heart race as she took a step closer to the city's walls. She had waited so long for this moment, and now, as the time finally came to face the man who had destroyed her, she felt a strange mix of fear and hope. Was she truly ready? Could she confront him, or would the pain of her past swallow her whole? The pull she felt toward Vincenzo was undeniable. Every time he left a rose on her grave, she felt it deep inside her, like a thread that connected their fates. The roses, a symbol of his regret, or perhaps his guilt, were his only way of mourning her, of remembering her. He had no idea she was still alive, no idea that the woman he mourned had never truly died. The curse had kept her from reaching him, from showing him the truth. But the curse was weakening now. She could feel the change in the air, the shift that told her it was time. As she stepped deeper into the city, she could hear the distant sounds of life. The chatter of people, the clink of glasses from taverns, the rustle of footsteps on cobblestone streets. She had once been part of this world, a woman of noble birth with a future ahead of her. But now she was nothing more than a shadow, a ghost with unfinished business. She could only watch as the world moved on without her. Her feet carried her forward, though each step felt like 1,000 pounds. She was close now, close enough to feel the warmth of the light spilling out from Vincenzo's mansion. She stopped in the shadows of a nearby alley, hidden from sight. For a long moment, Serafina stood there, watching, waiting. Inside the mansion, Vincenzo sat in his study, a room filled with books, maps, and treasures from all over the land. He had been at war for years, not only with other families and enemies, but with his own guilt. He had known Serafina once. She had been beautiful, kind, and full of life. Her laughter had been like music in the halls of his home. She had been the daughter of his greatest enemy, and yet he had never truly seen her as an enemy. There had been something about her that had always made him question his own choices. But now, after the fire, after the destruction of her family, all he could do was visit her grave, week after week, and leave a single rose. He didn't know why he did it. Perhaps it was because he felt guilty. Perhaps it was because he still couldn't believe she was gone. Whatever the reason, it had become a ritual, one that made him feel as though he was somehow atoning for a crime he couldn't remember committing. But the truth was, Vincenzo didn't know what happened that night. He didn't know the full story of how Serafina's family had been betrayed. He didn't know the truth of her death, only that the woman he had once admired was no longer in the world, and it was all his fault. His fingers brushed the delicate rose on his desk as he stared out the window into the night. He had not been able to sleep in weeks. Night after night, the image of Serafina's grave haunted him. He wondered if she was watching him, as if she knew the guilt that consumed him. "I should have protected her," he whispered to himself. "I should have done something." The words felt empty in the silence of the room. He had done nothing, and now she was gone. But as he stared at the rose, he wondered for the first time if she was truly gone. Outside, Serafina felt a chill run down her spine as if the very air had shifted. Something inside her stirred. She could feel him, feel his presence just beyond the mansion walls. He was close, so close she could almost reach out and touch him. The pain of her past, the betrayal, the flames of her family's destruction, all of it rushed to the surface. But beneath it all, there was something else. Something she couldn't deny. She wanted answers. She wanted revenge. But most of all, she wanted to see him. She wanted to confront him, to hear the truth from his lips. What had happened that night? Why had he turned his back on her family? Did he even know the truth? Her heart pounded in her chest as she stepped forward, moving silently through the dark streets toward the mansion. As she reached the gates, her hand brushed the cold iron. She paused, knowing she was crossing a line. The curse had kept her from entering this world for so long. Now that she had crossed the threshold, there was no turning back. She was no longer just a ghost. She was here, in the world of the living. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The mansion's courtyard was grand, with fountains and marble statues, but it all seemed so empty now. The beauty of the place only served to highlight the emptiness inside. She walked slowly, her footsteps silent on the stone paths, her heart heavy with the weight of what she was about to do. She reached the front door, and for a moment, she hesitated. Could she really do this? Could she face him after everything that had happened? And then she remembered her family, the life that had been stolen from her, the curse that bound her. This was the moment she had been waiting for. She couldn't turn back now. Before she could raise her hand to knock, the door opened, and there he was. Vincenzo. He stood in the doorway, his dark eyes wide with surprise. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was thick with tension, and Serafina could feel the weight of his gaze on her, as if he were searching for something, perhaps for the answer to the question that had haunted him for so long. And then, as if in a dream, he whispered, "Serafina?" Cliffhanger. Serafina's breath caught in her throat as Vincenzo's voice broke through the silence. For a moment she couldn't move, couldn't speak. Could it be? Could he truly recognize her, even after everything? The words echoed in Serafina's mind, a question she had never expected to hear. Serafina? The sound of her name on Vincenzo's lips was like a sudden wave crashing over her. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but now that it was real, she could hardly believe it. She stood frozen in place, her breath caught in her chest. She could see him clearly, standing in the doorway of the mansion, his face a mixture of disbelief and something else, something deeper, something she couldn't quite name. Vincenzo's eyes searched hers, as if trying to find something, a memory perhaps, or a ghost of the woman he had once known. His gaze flickered from her face to her hands, and then to the shadows that clung to her like a cloak. He took a cautious step forward as though afraid to approach too quickly, but his voice remained steady, though shaken. How can this be?" he whispered. Serafina felt the weight of his words press down on her. How indeed? How could she? The woman he had thought dead for so long suddenly appear before him, standing in the flesh but still so intangible. The curse that had kept her alive but trapped in the shadow of the forest was still with her, pulling at the edges of her being. She was not entirely whole, not fully alive, not fully dead. Her body still carried the cold touch of death, and yet here she was, standing in front of him, as real as the moonlight that bathed the courtyard. "I'm not entirely what you think," Serafina finally managed to say, her voice soft but strong. She wanted to explain, to tell him everything, about the curse, about the fire, about the life that had been stolen from her. But the words felt heavy in her throat, like they didn't belong to her anymore. She was no longer the woman who had once danced through these halls free and full of life. That woman was gone. Vincenzo stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "Then what are you? How are you standing here? Why now after all this time?" Serafina shook her head slowly, her hands trembling at her sides. "I was cursed. I never died, not truly, but I was trapped, unable to move on, forced to live in the shadows. watching everything from afar. The confusion in Vincenzo's eyes deepened, his brow furrowing as he tried to understand. Cursed? Trapped? By who? And why did you disappear? Why didn't you— I never had a choice, she interrupted. You never knew the truth. My family, my father, he was betrayed. I was left to die in the flames, but it wasn't supposed to end that way. She paused, the words coming slower now, as though she were pulling them from some deep, painful place inside her. You did this. Your betrayal. It set everything in motion. And I paid the price. The words hung in the air between them, sharp and cutting. She could see the way his face changed, the way his breath hitched as the weight of her accusation landed. His mouth opened as though to speak, but no words came. Instead, he reached out a hand, his fingers trembling. I never wanted this, Serafina, he whispered, his voice breaking. I never meant for any of it to happen. Your family. None of it was supposed to end like this. I didn't know. You didn't know? Serafina's voice grew stronger, fueled by the pain that had festered in her heart for years. You didn't know? You betrayed us, Vincenzo. You took everything from me, my family, my life, and then you left me to die. Do you have any idea what that was like? To burn alive while the man you once trusted stood by and did nothing? Her words were like knives, each one striking deeper than the last. She could see the guilt in his eyes, the horror of the truth sinking in, but there was no satisfaction in it. No victory. Only the raw, unhealed wound of a woman who had been left to suffer, alone for far too long. Vincenzo closed his eyes as though trying to block out the pain of her words. I was wrong, Serafina, he said quietly. I see that now. I was a fool. I thought I could control everything, but I couldn't, and now I have nothing but regret. Serafina felt a strange pang in her chest, a flicker of something that wasn't anger or pain, something softer, something more complicated. She had wanted this, wanted him to feel the weight of his guilt, to understand the cost of his actions. But now that it was here, she didn't know what to do with it. You don't understand, she said, her voice quieter now, the anger draining away. Regret won't bring them back. Regret won't undo the curse. And it won't undo what you did to me. Vincenzo's hand dropped to his side, and for a moment the two of them stood in silence, the air thick with unspoken words. The mansion behind him seemed to fade, as though it were part of some dream, a world they no longer belonged to. I don't expect forgiveness, Vincenzo said after a long pause, his voice steady but filled with sorrow. I don't even deserve it. But I am sorry, Serafina, more than you will ever know. I never meant for this to happen. Serafina's eyes softened, but only slightly. She had heard apologies before, and they had never been enough. They had never brought her peace. But there was something in Vincenzo's voice now, something raw and unguarded that made her wonder. Could he really be sorry? Or was this just another attempt at redemption that would leave her heart more broken than before? Sorry doesn't change the past, she said, her voice quieter now, more resigned than angry. Sorry doesn't bring back my family, or the life I could have had. She turned away from him, her footsteps echoing in the courtyard as she walked toward the gate. Her heart was a tangled mess of emotions, grief, rage, and something else she couldn't name. Was it pity? Was it forgiveness? She didn't know. She only knew that standing here, facing the man who had caused all this pain, didn't feel like a victory. It felt like another loss. Serafina, wait! Vincenzo called after her, his voice urgent. She stopped but didn't turn around. She couldn't. Not yet. I won't let you leave like this, he said, taking a few steps toward her. Please let me make things right. I'll do whatever it takes, anything. Serafina closed her eyes, fighting the ache in her chest. Could she truly trust him? Could she believe that the man standing before her, the man who had destroyed everything she once held dear, was capable of redemption? Or was this just another lie, another empty promise? You can't fix this, she said quietly, the words a final truth. You can't fix me. You can't fix what's been broken. And with that, she walked out of the courtyard and back into the night, leaving Vincenzo standing there, his heart heavy with regret and guilt. Cliffhanger. As Serafina disappears into the shadows, Vincenzo stands motionless, watching her leave. A new question begins to take root in his mind. If he truly wanted to make things right, could he? And how far would he go to do so? The air was heavy with tension as Serafina walked deeper into the night. She could still feel Vincenzo's presence even though she had turned her back on him. His words echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of the past that refused to fade. "I'm sorry. I'll do anything." But no matter how much he apologized, the past couldn't be undone. The fire that had burned her family, the betrayal that had cost her everything, was not something she could forget with a few words. She had waited so long for this moment, to finally stand before him and make him understand the pain he had caused. Yet now that she had, it only felt like another wound had been opened. Serafina's heart was a battlefield. One side filled with rage, the other with something far more dangerous: doubt. Could she forgive him? Could she allow herself to feel the smallest thread of sympathy for the man who had been responsible for her suffering? She wasn't sure, but what she did know was that she couldn't stay in the shadows forever. As she walked through the darkened streets of the city, her mind raced with questions. What was she supposed to do now? She was caught between two worlds: the living world that she had once known, and the cursed realm that she could never fully escape. The curse had kept her bound to the earth, unable to move forward, unable to truly live. And now that she had stepped into the world of the living again, the curse seemed to grow stronger, feeding off her confusion and her longing. But it wasn't just the curse that had changed. Something in Vincenzo had shifted as well. She could see it in his eyes: the remorse, the guilt, the desperate need for redemption. He hadn't known the full truth of what had happened, but now he did. Now, he knew the cost of his actions. Serafina couldn't help but wonder, could he truly be sorry? Was he capable of changing? Her steps slowed as she reached the edge of the cursed forest. She had always returned here, even when she felt the pull of the city, even when she longed to confront Vincenzo. The forest had been her home for 2 years, a place where time had no meaning. It was here that she had learned to live without truly living, to exist between life and death. But now, as she stood at the edge of the forest, something felt different. The air was thick with magic, a strange energy that made her skin tingle. She could feel the curse tightening around her, pulling her back into its grasp. She could almost hear the whispers of the forest, the voices of the spirits that had once been her only companions. Serafina closed her eyes, trying to push the feelings aside. She couldn't let herself be consumed by the curse again. She couldn't return to that lonely existence, where the only thing that mattered was her revenge. She had to make a choice. A voice broke through her thoughts, and she spun around to see Vincenzo standing a few feet away. His face was pale, his eyes wide with concern. "Serafina, wait," he called out, his voice filled with urgency. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She had been hoping for this, to see him again, to hear him admit that he wanted to make things right. But now that he was here, standing before her, she wasn't sure if she was ready to face him again. "What do you want?" Serafina asked, her voice strained. Vincenzo stepped forward, his hand reaching out as if to touch her, but then he stopped, his fingers curling into a fist at his side. He knew better than to try to touch her. He had learned that much. "I want to make things right," he said quietly. "I know I can't undo the past, but I want to do whatever it takes to help you, to help us both." Serafina's eyes narrowed. "Help us both?" she echoed, incredulous. "What do you think you can do, Vincenzo? How can you help me after everything?" Vincenzo's face twisted with regret. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I've spent so long trying to fix everything else, trying to hold on to power and control, that I never stopped to think about what really mattered. About you, about the pain I caused." For a moment, Serafina didn't know what to say. His words were genuine, and that much she could feel. But was it enough? Could it ever be enough to erase the scars of the past? "Do you even know how to fix this?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You can't bring my family back. You can't bring back the life that was taken from me." Vincenzo's gaze softened, and he took a step closer. "No," he said, "I can't, but I can give you something else. I can help you break the curse. I can help you be free." The words hung in the air, heavy with promise. Serafina looked at him, trying to read his face, trying to understand if he was telling the truth. Could he really help her? Could anyone help her escape the prison she had been living in for so long? "You know about the curse?" she asked, surprised by the knowledge in his voice. Vincenzo nodded. "I've learned more about it since the night you disappeared. I've been trying to find a way to break it, to undo what I've done." Serafina's heart skipped a beat. Was it possible? Could he actually help her? I don't know if you can fix the past, Vincenzo, she said, her voice filled with a quiet desperation. But I'm willing to try. For the first time in years, I'm willing to hope. If you truly want to help, then show me. Show me that you can fix this. Vincenzo's eyes burned with determination. I will, he promised. I'll do whatever it takes. Serafina didn't know what that meant, but in that moment, she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't alone anymore. Together, they might just have a chance. Cliffhanger. As Vincenzo reached out to her again, Serafina hesitated. The curse still tugged at her, threatening to pull her back into the shadows. But the hope he offered was stronger than the fear. Could they truly break the curse? Could they find redemption together? The moon hung high in the sky, its pale light washing over the cursed forest like a silent witness to all that had happened. Serafina stood at the edge of the trees, looking out at the distant mansion. She could still feel the weight of Vincenzo's words echoing in her mind. I'll do whatever it takes. For the first time in years, she was willing to believe him. There had been a time when vengeance had been her only thought, when the pain of losing everything had driven her to seek revenge against the man who had betrayed her. But now, standing here, with the possibility of breaking the curse and of finally being free, Serafina felt a strange sense of hope. It was a feeling she had almost forgotten. But even as hope blossomed, doubt lingered. Could she truly move past everything that had happened? Could she forgive the man who had taken everything from her? Could she even trust him, knowing the darkness he had once been capable of? As Serafina walked slowly toward the mansion, each step felt heavier than the last. The curse still clung to her like a second skin, its presence a constant reminder of her torment. But she could also feel the pull of something else, something that had been buried deep within her heart. A longing for peace, for a life she thought she could never have again. Inside the mansion, Vincenzo stood in the study, his hands resting on the desk as he stared out the window. He had done everything in his power to make things right. He had sought knowledge, power, and ancient rituals, all in an attempt to break the curse that had trapped Serafina. But now, as the time drew near, he wasn't sure if any of it would be enough. He had made so many mistakes, hurt so many people, and now standing at the edge of redemption, he wondered if it was even possible to fix the damage he had done. Do you really think you can change things? A voice asked from behind him, and Vincenzo turned to see Serafina standing in the doorway. She was no longer a ghost, no longer trapped in the shadows. She was a woman, flesh and blood, standing before him, alive in a way he had never imagined possible. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of their shared history hung in the air between them, thick and suffocating. Vincenzo's heart pounded in his chest as he met Serafina's gaze. He had no idea what the future would hold, no idea if the curse would truly be broken, but he knew one thing. He couldn't bear to lose her again. I don't know, he said quietly, his voice filled with uncertainty. I don't know if I can ever fix what's been broken, but I can try. I will try. Serafina looked at him, her expression unreadable. She had come to him with a purpose, to seek redemption, to break the curse, and to find peace. But now that she was here, standing face to face with the man who had destroyed her life, she didn't know what to do. Could she trust him? Could she trust herself? For a long time, she had wanted nothing more than to see Vincenzo suffer for what he had done. She had wanted revenge, wanted to make him feel the same pain she had felt. But now, as she stood before him, those feelings seemed distant, almost foreign. It wasn't that the pain had gone away, but that something else had replaced it. Something far more complicated. I don't want your apologies, Serafina said softly, her voice carrying the weight of all that had happened. I don't want to hear you tell me you're sorry. I want to know if you can truly change. I want to know if you're willing to fight for us and for me. Vincenzo's heart skipped a beat at the words "for us." He had never imagined that Serafina could still want something from him, still believe that they could be more than enemies. I will fight, he said, his voice steady. I will fight for you. I will fight for the future, for whatever chance we have, and I will not stop, not until the curse is broken and you are free. Serafina took a step forward, her heart racing as she looked into his eyes. She could see the sincerity in his words, the depth of his regret. She had seen so many lies in her life, but this felt different. She had felt his pain, his guilt, and now she could feel something else, a flicker of hope. She held his gaze for a moment longer before finally speaking. Then let's do it. she said quietly. "Let's break the curse." With that, Vincenzo moved toward her, closing the distance between them. His hand reached out, and for a moment Serafina hesitated. The curse still clung to her, a reminder of all that had happened, but she could feel the warmth of Vincenzo's touch, and for the first time in years, she felt something else, something that wasn't bitterness or anger. Together, they stepped into the center of the room, the ancient ritual they had been preparing for finally beginning. The air grew heavy with power as Vincenzo began to chant the words he had learned, ancient and forgotten, words that were meant to break the curse and free Serafina from the prison she had been trapped in for so long. Serafina felt the magic surrounding her, pulling at the very essence of her being. She could feel the curse tightening around her, and for a moment it seemed like it would pull her back into its grasp. But then something shifted. The magic that had bound her, the darkness that had kept her trapped, began to fade. The curse was weakening. Serafina gasped, feeling the weight lift from her shoulders. She could feel her body growing lighter, her mind clearer. The curse that had held her captive for so long was finally breaking. But it wasn't just the curse that was lifting. The walls she had built around her heart, the walls that had kept her from truly feeling anything for Vincenzo, were also starting to fall. She could feel the love she had buried deep within her, the love that had never truly disappeared, slowly returning. As the magic finally reached its peak, Serafina's body shuddered with the power of the release. The last of the curse faded away, and she stood there free. For the first time in years, she was truly alive. Vincenzo reached out, his hand trembling as he touched her face. He could see the change in her, the way her eyes had softened, the way the pain that had once consumed her had faded. She was free. "You're free," he whispered, his voice filled with awe and wonder. Serafina closed her eyes, a soft smile playing on her lips. "We're both free." For a long moment they stood there together. The past could never be undone, but the future was theirs to write. They had broken the curse, and in doing so, they had also found a new beginning. Cliffhanger. As the last traces of magic faded, Serafina and Vincenzo stood in silence, the weight of their journey lifting from their shoulders. What would the future hold for them? Could they truly find peace, or was there more to the story yet to be told?